Well, welcome to part 4. We're going to finish up the back of this horse. So the first thing we're going to do is put in our initial background layer of 508.5 Prussian blue. So I've sanded it, wiped it off, and I'm adding color to the back and chest of the horse. We have to put this in before we can finish the mane. Now I'm using my 6B charcoal pencil to define the leg before I cover up this area with pastel so that it will show through, just like we did in some of the dark areas earlier. By using the 6B charcoal, it helps us save our place and be able to find the areas that we want to work on more easily. So I'm just carefully drawing this in before I add any more pastel to the paper. I use a General 6B charcoal pencil. I like their brand of charcoal both in black and in white charcoal. So I'm putting in a little indication of where the muscles are in the leg. And this will really help me when I go to add those darker areas after we've put in all the layers of pastel. I'm drawing in his stomach and his back leg. We just have a hint of the back leg back there. So now I'm indicating where these muscle lines are that come down from his neck. We haven't done too much work in this area as far as color goes yet. We've kind of base coated it in with a couple of colors, but I'm going to mark my place for darks with my pencil, and we'll come back later and use darker blacks to fill that in. I'm also kind of indicating where the mane is going to end up. So now I'm adding the blue, dark blue again, putting in that late. Now that I have my charcoal pencil in, I can see where to add the blue. Knowing that I won't lose that line to the leg. And when the blue stops coming off the pastel, when pigment is no longer being deposited onto your paper, just sand it and wipe it off. And now I'm adding the 707.3 dark gray. Following the same steps that we used for the face of the horse. Now I'm using it up on its end. You can certainly break your stick and sand it and just use half a piece. And that's what I've done. I've gone back and got my half a piece so I can cover more area a little faster. Being careful not to get into that background that we just put in. And I'm going around the back of the leg and just covering the back of the horse and the stomach and the back leg. I'm adding a little more color with the dark gray, another layer, very lightly. Now I'm using my dark blue, just like we did before, the 508.5, to kind of push in the gray. And then the next color we add is going to be the 700.5 black Rembrandt. So I'm adding a light layer of that over the gray and the blue that we previously put down on the paper. Now I've decided to add some purple to my background, the 536.3. It's a good idea to add the colors that are in your horse to your background. So I added a little bit of purple, and now I'm adding some 538.5 Mars Violet to the coat of the horse. And a little more purple or violet. I can go back and forth and add different colors, glaze them in, and get this, to look exactly like I want it to look. I love to have a variety of color. Using the brown again. Now I'm going to use my 229 black NuPastel to start adding that shadow behind the shoulder and the front leg of the horse. I want to make sure that's defined before I color the horse's leg. So I'm putting that in with my 229 black. I'm going to turn it over and use the flat end, which really works well. You can also break off a piece. I have several pieces, little pieces like that in my pastel box, so I can just pull out a little piece and when I need something to go really dark with. But if you don't have that, just use the back end of your black pastel. I'm going along the bottom of the horse as well. We're building up that dark, rich color. I put in a fairly good coat of that deep, rich black across the bottom of the horse. Still adding black. I've moved up a little further on his body now. There is a highlighted area between the bottom edge and further up on his body, so I want to leave that area open. I've found a little piece of black pastel in my box, so I'm using that now to more easily fill in this black area on the horse's body. It goes a little bit faster. I am cross-hatching it, getting an even coat. Black NuPastel is very hard. It's harder than even the hard Rembrandts that we've been using. So I can use a fair amount of pressure to push it in. Now there were a couple of little dimples there on my paper, little scars, that I used the black to fill those in to get a more even application of color. And so I'm going to use it around here on the front of the horse's chest as well. Now here I'm not pushing as hard as I was on the back, so I'm just getting in that dark color while I have the NuPastel in my hand. Now I've switched back to my other stick of NuPastel that has a point on it, so I can start defining where this mane goes on the back. So I'm going to put in my darks, and then I can add the lights. You can see the white lines showing through that I added with the white charcoal pencil in the very early stages of my painting. So that lets me know where the mane is going to end on the back. Now I'm using my 700 0.5 Rembrandt black, smoothing out that area by adding a light coat of that. And now I'm using the 727.8 light blue gray to add in some lighter areas of the horse's coat. I'm using it up on its end. This helps to show roundness in the body because the body's not flat. And I rub this around with my fingers, kind of rubbing it into the fabric of the paper. Now I'm going to use my 289 NuPastel to begin to add the medium value hairs to the horse's mane, just like we did before. I'm using the corner to make the hairs kind of wavy and carry them down on the back. Now that we've put the colors in for the back, we can pull the hair over top and finish off that mane. I'm using the sharp edge. And rotating it. So I've got that little, did you notice that? That little hair that ended abruptly, so I used my stick to come around and work that into the mane. Now I've switched to the 299, and so this makes the hairs a little bit brighter this time. And with my black, go in and add some shadows. I just love the way this is looking. It's coming along so beautifully. I'll speed this up just a tiny little bit while I add these light hairs. So we're still using the same basic colors. We're using the 289, the 299, the 211, and also the 229 black. I'm using the sharp edge, and occasionally I'm using the corner to draw with. And now I've brought back in my 6B pencil to fill in the mane a little bit, and by that I mean adding more fine hairs to get it a little denser. I'm using the corner of my 299 to draw these curvy hairs. It's easier to do with the corner. And then places where I know it needs to be darker, I'll use my 229 black NuPastel. I'm using more 211 now to add the brighter colors and varying the direction here and there to add variety. And now I've switched back to my 229 black, and we're also in real time now, and I'm carefully and slowly adding these dark shadow areas where the muscles are in the horse's neck. There's also a light edge, rim of light on the outside edge of the neck. So I'm preserving that, and we'll probably add some lighter color to that as we finish up. And I have my glassine covering this beautiful horse's face because I sure don't want to mess that up. Now I'm using my 289 NuPastel to add, to strengthen that little highlight that runs along the outside of the horse's neck and also comes up into that muscle area. I don't want it to be super bright, which is why I chose the 289 as opposed to a white or something. That would have just been too harsh and would have taken away from the horse's face. So I'm using that 299 to put in these highlight areas in the horse's neck along those muscle ridges. Yeah, rubbing them with my finger just kind of blends them in. Here I've zoomed out some, changed the viewpoint so you can see what I'm doing lower down on the horse's body, adding the highlight with that 289. And brightening it with the 299. Just a bit here and there. I can't stress enough taking your time, slowing down, enjoying the work, and taking your time to do things. Now I've got my 700 Rembrandt. I'm going over some of these areas, particularly the shadow under the horse's neck, and darkening that, and going back under the neck as well. I love the fact that when I paint like this, I can add more layers as necessary and darken it, add more color. As long as I keep my layers light, I can continue to do this. See, I'm loving the way that looks. I'm going to add some more of our violet, 536.3 to the body of the horse. I like the way the violet and the black work together. Now I'm using that 727.8 light blue gray, the end of the stick, to add the highlight that's on the chest of the horse. It's a bigger area, so I don't need to use a smaller stick. And now in the center of that, I'm using my 299 to add a brighter highlight, and I'm going to blend that in. And that shows that nice shiny spot where the light hits the horse. I'm using my 299 on the flat end to add some light color in this area of the horse's body, just at the top of his leg. So I'm adding those lights and rubbing them in. Now if they get to be too bright, if yours are too bright, you can go over it with the 700.5 and dull it down. I'm adding some 700.5 here in the shadow areas to strengthen those. I'm going to add a little brighter 299 to that area. Now I've moved my painting up some so you can see better. And I'm using the violet 536.3 to add some violet in the background area next to the chest and leg. Just like I added the violet on the close to the back, I thought we needed to apply that color as well to this area. I like the violet. I think it adds a lot to the composition. Join me for part 5 of the Black Horse in Soft Pastel.